Greetings and welcome. I'm Joan Savoy, and I welcome you on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lafayette and the University of Louisiana at Lafayette College of Liberal Arts. The League is a nonpartisan and nonprofit organization. It does not endorse or support candidates or parties. Since 1920, the League of Women Voters has worked to educate and inform voters. Membership is open to all men and women over the age of 18. The Lafayette League encourages informed and active participation in government. Our members work to increase understanding of public policy issues and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League is honored to co-sponsor this forum with ULL and to have as the moderator Ms. Sally Donlin, Assistant Dean of the College of Liberal Arts. Please welcome Ms. Donlin.
Good evening. Welcome to the Candidate Forum at UL Lafayette. Tonight, we're offering the public a glimpse of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. We're delighted that all 4 candidates are here for tonight's forum. First, please take this time to silence your cell phones for the duration of the forum. Next, the format. The questions will be new to the candidates. They have not received them in advance. The questions are designed to give candidates an opportunity to express their positions on issues relevant to voters. Our process tonight will be to give each candidate, in alphabetical order, 1 minute to introduce themselves. We'll give them 2 minutes for closing remarks. In between the intro and the closing, we'll pose questions that all the candidates will answer. Candidates are asked not to address each other directly because this is a forum and not a debate. Answers will be limited to 1 minute, strictly enforced by our timekeeper, Ms. Deborah Ami. She will give candidates a 10-second warning and then stop them with a Are you prepared? Okay. She'll give you a 30-second warning. You'll know you'll be halfway there then, okay? Okay. And stop them with a warning signal if you go over the 1 minute. So when you get a signal from Ms. Ami, you know you're halfway home, okay? Thank you. Now, let's hear from the candidates. Please introduce yourselves, beginning with Rick Chagua.
Good evening. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and all of you that have come out tonight to visit with us and learn a little bit about us. As was said earlier, my name is Rick Chagua. I'm a lifelong resident of Lafayette Parish. I was born and raised into law enforcement, and I started state police when I was 19 years old. I spent approximately 25 years with the Louisiana State Police, and I served in various roles, everything from uniform operations through investigative services, which included detectives, narcotics, and gaming enforcement. I feel that my background in public safety services throughout my entire adult life prepares me to serve as your sheriff for Lafayette Parish. I know what I need to bring to the community. I've listened to what you've said as we go around the parish, and I can assure you we can make this community a safer place and build on what Sheriff Newstrom has already put into place for us to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chagua. Mr. Garber?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank y'all all for the opportunity to be here and coming out tonight and choosing our debate, our forum, over the presidential debate. My name is Mark Garber. I'm 44 years old. I have a Bachelor of Criminal Justice from Louisiana State University. I have a law degree from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. I have worked in this parish as a felony prosecutor for almost 7 years. Prior to that, I was a Secret Service agent. Prior to that, I was an Air Force OSI criminal investigator for the Department of Defense. Prior to that, I was an Arlington police officer for just shy of 10 years and held various assignments, including police sniper, motorcycle officer, patrol supervisor, and full-time SWAT team leader. And prior to that, I was a game warden and deputy sheriff here in Louisiana. My platform includes new technology to do more with existing resources, increasing and continuing the programs to save taxpayer money, and using my prosecutorial experience to make better cases for better and easier prosecutions.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Mr. Leger.
Thank you. My name is Chad Leger. I'm a candidate for Lafayette Parish Sheriff, and I'd like to thank the league as well for hosting this public forum. I'm 49 years of age, and I'm born and raised here in Lafayette Parish. I've been raised here by my family. I've been on school here in public schools in Lafayette Parish. 26 years ago, I made a choice. That choice is to serve the people of Lafayette Parish, starting at the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, where I worked there 14 years, and working in correctionals, working in patrol, detectives, K-9, and all the other enforcement divisions across the part. I also been chief of police for the city of Scott for the last 12 and a half years, working as an administrator, proven leader, and proven leadership, providing the second safest city in the state of Louisiana in the 2013 uniform crime reports that are turned over to the FBI. So we understand what needs to be done. We have the vision, and we have the efforts and the proven leadership to make a difference in making Lafayette Parish as a whole a safer place for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leger. Mr. Rogers.
My name is John Rogers. I grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for almost 16 years. I graduated from Lafayette High. I'm glad to be back here in Griffin Hall. I want to thank y'all for having it here at UL because I am proud to say that I'm the only candidate that is a UL alumni, so go Ragin' Cajuns. And I graduated with my concentration in criminal justice and sociology. I went on to get my law degree from Southern University, where I worked full-time for the Sheriff's Office and went to night school to get my law degree. I started my career back in '99 under Don Bro, and I've been under Sheriff Newstrom under his tenure. I started in corrections, went through contract services, patrol. I did 10 years in CID, and after graduating from law school, I was given the opportunity to be in administration. I've seen what Sheriff Newstrom's done. I appreciate what he's done. I want to continue building towards the future, but I want positive change with positive results. And with y'all, we can do that. So I appreciate it, and you'll hear it from here until the end of the campaign. Positive change with positive results.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Now that the candidates have introduced themselves, I will begin asking the questions that were prepared by a panel. All candidates will answer all questions. The first question will be started by Mark Garber. The candidate who answers first will alternate throughout the forum. Mr. Garber, the Sheriff's Office has an operating budget of around $50 million and a 900-member staff. What qualifies you for heading such a large operation?
Well, first of all, my education level. I have a PhD level education, which is currently the same level of education by our agency head, Sheriff Newstrom. More than that, it's my outside experience working in not only outside agencies such as Arlington Police Department, which is about the same size as this agency, as both a officer and a supervisor, but also my business experience. I'm the only candidate in this race with successful private sector experience. And the private sector, as I like to say, is a true meritocracy. If you don't make good decisions in the private sector, you will fail. The world will eat you up. And this community deserves a sheriff who can run the correction side of this department like a business and save money for the taxpayers and devote resources to where they belong, to crime fighting. We need fewer people in jail for minor offenses so I can put more people on the street fighting crime where they belong and catching the serious criminals who are a threat to us and our children. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Leger.
Well, actually the budget is almost $60 million. And working with a staff of 900 plus people, being a leader right now, working in the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office and coming from the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, that helps me improving the leadership and the experience and the knowledge of how that day-to-day operations, such as John, who currently works in the Lafayette Sheriff's Office. I know the ins and outs of the Sheriff's Office and working in the multiple divisions that the Sheriff's Office entertains. But the biggest thing is that I've worked as a chief of police for the last 12 and a half years for the city of Scott. I have not only prepared a budget, operated a budget, but maintained a balanced budget and been held accountable for that budget for the last 12 and a half years to the state legislative auditors and successfully completed and worked that budget and understanding the operations of it. So even though it's a larger operation as far as for manpower than what I have now, and the numbers are higher as far as for budget purposes, I am the only candidate that brings the boots on the ground experience in law enforcement as well as the administrative experience to make sure, and my time is up, to make sure that we can bring the Sheriff's Office to the next level. Thank you.
You could finish out your thought, but, okay? Thank you so much. Mr. Rogers.
Like I said, I've been with the Sheriff's Office for almost 16 years. My entire career has been with the Sheriff's Office. I started at the bottom. I worked in corrections, went through to CID. I've been in administration. I currently work handling administrative issues dealing with new and pending litigation as well as risk management issues. Moving forward, I want to bring leadership, and I've said it before, stripes on your arm, bars on your shoulders, a badge on your chest doesn't make you a leader. What makes you a leader is what's in your heart and what's in your mind. And are you willing to lead by example and do what's right for the people of Lafayette and do what's right for Lafayette Parish? Most importantly, I want to bring a totally different aspect to the Sheriff's Office, and that's open communication. I want people to be able to talk to the Sheriff. I want people to be able to walk in and say, hey, I want to ask the Sheriff a question. I think those aspects are important. I know a lot of people have wanted to reach out to the Sheriff in various different angles, and I think we need to bring a positive change.
Thank you. Mr. Shagwa.
Okay, in reference to the budget and staff, it's my understanding from talking to Director Sabile, we have approximately a $60 million budget, right at $59.5 million, and we have approximately 800 employees at the Sheriff's Office. With my experience with the state police, we were educated in the process of budget preparation, and we actually participated in budget preparation on a statewide level. So I have an exceptional background of experience in participating in budget on that level. The big thing is the sheriff is not going to be handling the budget day to day. We need to have the proper personnel in place that will set up that budget, that we will work with through budget heads of each of the divisions, and will take care of the budget very carefully with many eyes looking at it to make sure that it's done properly. As far as the personnel, again, the organization I come from was about 1,200 strong at the time I was there. I participated in leadership in that organization, and I participated in an organization that had a little over 100 people. So I have experience in dealing with people on that level.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question will go to Chad Leger first. Lafayette Parish is a diverse community. What are your plans to address issues of diversity and equal treatment in deputy interactions with the public and in recruiting qualified deputies that will represent our diversity?
Well, bringing it to what are we going to do to work in the community is we have to have community involvement. It's not solely the responsibility of the sheriff. It's not solely the responsibility of the chief of police in Lafayette or any other jurisdiction. That burden is not solely on them. It's a matter of getting community involvement and getting community leaders involved to help and work to make Lafayette Parish a more diverse and a more understanding and a safer community as a whole. It's a matter of bringing in better qualifications and experience. Sheriff Newsom has a great process as far as for hiring process right now. They do an extensive background check. So I don't think there should be anything changed on the hiring process and the background check wise. And it's a matter of recruiting, going into the universities, going into other local law enforcement agencies that have qualified law enforcement officers that you bring to their attention the availability and the advancements that can be made to bring that diverse crowd and to bring that diverse group of men and women to the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office with good prominent salaries and benefits proven to them to bring them to the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Well, there's no doubt that we have issues. The community at large has issues. It's a problem throughout all of the United States. Fortunately, yesterday I was able to meet with the community organization working with the NAACP about a recent shooting. And one of the things that I want to express is the transparency that we have to bring, the unification that we have to bring. I've met with numerous pastors, I've met with pillars of the community, and I've expressed to them, as your next sheriff, that's one of the aspects that we need to bring boots on the ground. We need to encourage open relationship and open communication, because right now law enforcement has a black cloud over it, and unfortunately it's not going to change until we stand up and say enough is enough, that we're not going to accept certain attitudes, we're not going to accept certain behaviors from our officers. We need to realize that we're all God's people, and that's how we need to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Shagwa.
Diversity is a very, very big subject to talk about in just a minute, but I'll do the best I can. The Lafayette Sheriff's Office should be interacting with most of the public in Lafayette Parish. As I go around the community, and I recognize that there are multiple cultures in our community, just not one or two. We have an Asian community here. We have an Arabic community. We have African American community, and the list goes on. And I think our police officers need to be trained in cultural diversity so that we have a recognition of how these people communicate and how we should communicate with them. We need to treat everybody fairly under the law, and the law is held accountable for all people, but how we interact with those people is critically important. That's one of the things that's been asked of me as we go around. As far as the diversification in the sheriff's office, they do have cultural diversification in the sheriff's office, but I want to recruit specifically for that, to make sure that we have the people in our organization that can communicate with these different cultures on their level to make sure that we accomplish our end goal, and that's public safety.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
Diversity in a society equals strength. Diversity in a police department or any law enforcement agency needs not only to reflect that community that it serves, but it also equals strength for that agency. And we want the strongest agency that we can have. We have a very diverse force already with the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, but the next sheriff should focus on additional recruitment of people of diverse backgrounds to better reflect the community that we serve. There's about 60% minority population in our correctional facilities, and yet minorities make up 33%, give or take, of the population. So the question, it could have been, and maybe should have been, is there a disparate percentage here that we need to deal with? Yes, there is. Yes, we do need to deal with it. The answer is not only a diversification of the police force, but also more community-based policing, where officers are getting out of their cars, getting into the community, and that's how you head off a Ferguson or a Baltimore from ever reaching that level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question goes to John Rogers first. How do you define public safety, and what policies and practices are you planning to implement to help ensure it parish-wide?
Well,
Mr. Rogers.
Public safety is extremely important, obvious with the sheriff being the chief law enforcement officer of the parish. I think it's important that we address the issues that we're dealing with as they come, because like other communities, we're going to see the same problems. Proactive policing, but you have to have the perfect blend of proactive law enforcement and public service. I've said it before, the sheriff's office is not a business. We are a public service agency that has business components. So working within that, we need to get out into the community and have well-trained officers that can address diverse issues that they're going to come across on a daily basis. Unfortunately, with the shooting this recent summer, Lafayette is now in a statistical category of a very small amount of towns that are going to deal with these issues. Moving forward, we need to be ready. We need to be well-trained and well-qualified to be able to address these issues. But it's a perfect blend of proactive law enforcement and public service.
Thank you. Mr. Shagwa.
Public safety. You're asking for a definition. It's a very broad subject and it's very complex. We as law enforcement officers have to look at our community with a list of laws and rules and ordinances that we have to follow, and we have to bring that to the community and ask them to comply. One of the things that we need to recognize as police officers, how we affect the public is directly proportional to how they allow us to police them. Remember, we are public servants. We serve the public by being their police officers. Consequently, we have to work with the community in a positive way. We need to meet with the community leaders, have a relationship with the community leaders so that we can affect the community in a positive way. Public safety goes across the board: traffic operations, criminal investigations, support services in the community, all the way to the things that we do in the jail that directly affect public safety. The programs that currently exist in the Lafayette Parish Jail are outstanding, and they help increase public safety services. I will continue those services.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
The building blocks of an agency that serves the public to protect it are patrol, crime scene, and investigations. All of those areas at the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office can stand to be improved upon. As with any agency, we can always strive for improvement. How we serve the public, the type of cases we make to serve up to the DA's office for prosecution are of the utmost importance. And as I mentioned earlier, my experience as a prosecutor in this parish comes in very handy because I've seen the whole parish from up above. I've been looking down on the parish for almost 7 years, doing my own intake, receiving cases from every jurisdiction within this parish and from the state police as well. So I've got a bird's eye view, and I'm ready to hit the ground running as the next sheriff to focus on real crime fighting.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
Defining public safety, in my opinion, is providing the best quality of life possible for every man and woman to live and work, and for our kids to play, learn, and grow. That's public safety, providing the best quality of life possible. That starts with our schools. It starts with our school resource officers, having qualified individuals in our schools, increasing our patrol divisions to have proactive law enforcement instead of reactive law enforcement. But most important, like I mentioned earlier, it's about community involvement. It's about putting the community together with law enforcement to work together to serve the people that we've chosen to serve. Like I mentioned earlier as well, the city of Scott's the second safest city in the state of Louisiana and the safest in the parish in 2013. We've worked on that. We've improved that. We've perfected that process. It's bringing that same philosophy of proactive law enforcement, serving the people, and being out in the community, working with the people to provide that quality of life as best as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question goes first to Mr. Shagwa. Please give us your view on the current internal affairs procedure and processes for complaints or allegations against the department. Is it adequate, or what changes would you recommend?
I think the Lafayette Sheriff's Office has a very good policy and procedure set up, and an actual section set up to do nothing but internal affairs investigations. They receive complaints on a regular basis from the public, and I don't mean that in a negative way. They take complaints as they come in on a regular basis, and they have a process already in place to go through these investigations and assure that the public is responded to in a positive way. Remember, as police officers, the first thing that we have to do is police ourselves. And as long as we're looking at ourselves, making ourselves the best that we can possibly be, we are going to recognize problems. And that's why an internal affairs section is absolutely critical. I was asked about this one. As far as I know, the best of my knowledge from knowing people in that organization, they have a very good internal affairs section. They have the proper tools in place so that they can effect proper investigations to deliver not only to the department, the public, and the district attorney's office the proper reports so that action can be taken if it's required.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
Well, our internal affairs unit at the sheriff's office is comprised of 3 sergeants, or at least three workers, and a lieutenant. They conduct polygraphs of all incoming hires, as well as take part in the other aspects of the hiring process, in addition to doing internal investigations. These guys are very hardworking for y'all's tax dollars. Have to say they do a very good job with what they have. They could probably double in size and not even notice a reduction in work. But like the rest of the sheriff's department, they are shorthanded, and they work with what they have, and they do a fantastic job. In fielding citizen complaints, to me that is probably the most important aspect of their job. And as your next sheriff, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will work closely to improve and expand internal affairs to better receive citizen concerns and complaints.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
I agree with Rick and Mark. The Sheriff's Office has a great program. It's very detailed when internal affairs complaints come in. I also know the process is very streamlined to the point that after the investigation, the complaint comes in, if it's something that these field supervisors can handle, they are given that complaint to handle internally on the field level. If it's a sergeant in a patrol division, or if it's someone in detectives or in corrections, wherever, they handle those minor complaints and adjustments that are made to the employees. But on the other hand, the employees and the staffing needs to, sorry, I apologize. My mind was working too fast. We also need to work on the thing, but the biggest thing that I want to bring to the Sheriff's Office Internal Affairs Division is once the complaint's going through and it's going through the supervisors, it needs to go to a board of the peers to decide if the employee has received fair judgment from the supervisors and making sure that the just cause is served prior to disciplinary infractions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Well, they actually have one captain that presides over internal affairs On top of that, there is a lieutenant, and then there's 3 investigators and a polygraphist who does the polygraphs for the background checks as well as the polygraphs for the investigations. I don't think that we necessarily have a problem with our internal affairs. What I see and the propensity for is unfair judgment or unfair investigations. I think that when we have complaints from internal affairs that are submitted to IA, internal affairs, that they should be judged or investigated properly, and favoritism should be taken out of it. I know that we have issues in law enforcement as far as trust, and I think once these investigations have been reviewed and they've been founded, either unfounded or sustained, that the file should be returned to the shift supervisor or to the immediate line supervisor, and there you meet and discuss whether or not, like Chief Leger said, it should go to a board or not. I think there needs to be a process of oversight, and I think it lacks that right now.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Garber will answer this next question first. What is your view on the diversion programs that address the needs of people with mental illness and substance abuse issues? Will you continue the existing diversion programs, or what are your plans for meeting the needs of this population going forward?
Well, we have a great substance abuse diversion program. The Acadiana Recovery Center is a facility that operates to address addiction issues, both inpatient and outpatient. We also have a burgeoning mental illness program, but the Sheriff's Department can't do this alone. There's going to have to be a partnership with the NGOs that operate in our parish, and as well as with the consolidated government, to create some kind of an entity similar to a restoration center, as it's been called in other locales, if you will. This is not the first. We're not alone. Every community faces problems with mentally ill who commit minor offenses. It's not an issue if someone who's mentally ill commits a murder, they're going to stay in jail. We're talking about the minor offenses, and should they be in LPCC or somewhere else? Obviously, they should be somewhere else, but no one else has a solution to it. But I've got a good plan to make one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
Again, Sheriff Newsom has done a great job with the diversion programs and alternatives to incarceration. He's taken Lafayette Parish and the whole state to a whole nother level with these programs and making things by leading to where that needs to be. Well, I support the programs. I think we need to evaluate a top to bottom evaluation and making sure that they're meeting the needs of the parish and the people of Lafayette Parish as far as what's going on and what the necessity is. When it comes to mental health, I look at it a different way. I look a little bit differently. I sat on the juvenile assessment program committee to put the juvenile assessment center together to help juveniles when committing crimes and in assessing their problems and their threats that they have as juveniles. I think we need to address that issue with mental health as well. And I agree with Mark that shouldn't be the whole responsibility of the sheriff, and that we need to bring other entities in to make sure that there's assessments are being made properly for the mental health and making sure that they're properly treated and that they're getting what they need and not just put in jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Mental health and substance abuse go hand in hand. We've said it numerous times through almost every forum that we've had. We do have Acadiana Recovery. I've been fortunate enough since I've been in administration to work with Acadiana Recovery and their various different programs. My problem is that we have no follow-up once a person comes through the jail and they are allowed through our mental health program to be evaluated and medicated. We have no follow-up on the outside. We can send them in a direction, we can offer to send them somewhere, but we don't have anything that's in place for these people to seek the help that they need. Unfortunately, if we can get together and work with the rest of the city, whether it's consolidated government, the individual municipalities, the city police, the individual agencies, then yeah, we can come up with a positive answer. I think that it would be a good idea to address it and to work forward. And if Mr. Garber has a plan, I'd love to hear it because I'm waiting to see.
Thank you. Mr. Chagwa.
The diversion programs in the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office are groundbreaking. Sheriff Newsom has stepped up in a lot of areas, working with the judiciary and the district attorney's office to come up with new programs that help us reduce the populations in the jail and make room for more violent offenders. But one of the biggest problems that Director Reardon showed me while I was over there was the number of mentally ill people that we have in our facilities. And the sheriff, again, had to step up because there were not resources out there to help these people. As all these other gentlemen have said, we need to work with our local city parish government, our legislators, and our governor to try to come up with alternative sources to move these people out of a jail facility into a proper mental health facility. I will work directly with our city parish government and our elected officials to make sure that we have that happen. I know it's going to be a long-term fight, but we're going to do that fight so that we provide the better services for the people that are in our facilities.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question goes to Chad Leger first. In what ways will you implement current and available technology advancements to the Sheriff's Department?
Well, as far as for advancements, one of the things that we've implemented with the Scott Police Department is very important is in-car cameras. Our patrol staff needs in-car cameras to be visually able to see everything that transpires on a traffic stop, a pursuit. Also the audio that's attached to that officer, that if they go into a residence or a building, they can be recorded up to 300 feet away. Taking it to the next level is we are the first city in Lafayette Parish to pioneer body cameras here in Lafayette Parish on every officer in our police department. Body cameras are very crucial. I think that's one of the things where we need to really focus on with the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office as sheriff, is making sure that our officers are safe, but also making sure that the citizens are safe. And having this technology, bringing that on board, is the in-car cameras as well as the body cameras are a top priority in my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Well, he already addressed the issue of body cameras. The sheriff's office is currently working to implement a body camera system as well as the policy and procedure that goes with it. But on top of that, we need to make sure that the in-the-car units, our laptops, those are top-notch. We have to make sure that our radio communication staff is well-trained. We need to make sure that our radios are top-notch. We need to stay on top of these things. Something as simple as bulletproof vests. I can tell you that I've talked to several employees, and there's some people that work in the various road crews that aren't provided bulletproof vests. Well, I'm sorry, you have a badge and a gun, and you're out there on the road crew. You can be a target. You should have a vest. It's simple things like that. We don't have to look at high-priced technology, but we do have to consider the public service aspect. We do have to consider the officer safety aspect. But staying at the forefront of technology is easy to do, but it requires funding. So again, it's all about fiscal responsibility. It's all about making sure that our officers have what they need and serving the public with safety and respect.
Thank you. Mr. Chagwa.
Well, I have to reiterate what both of the gentlemen before have said. Everything they've said is exactly accurate. Technology is a new thing for us in the past 10 or 15 years, and it's a great thing for us. Everything that's available to us today makes us able to do police work in a more efficient and safe manner. Also, our responsibility to the public now is addressed in a better way with the cameras, with the microphones. Everybody's carrying a phone camera now, so we should have our cameras too to make sure that the whole situation is recorded. Not to mention there's other technology becoming available to us. One of the things I want to see, and I don't want to take your term, but I want a collective center where we're using intelligence gathering. Mark refers to his idea as a fusion center. I don't want to steal the idea, but it's the same concept. I gave it to you, okay? So we need to use technology in that manner as well. We need to work with other agencies around here, other agencies within the parish, and use that technology to bring all of our stuff together so that we can work collectively. It's his idea.
Now, Mr. Garber,
Yes,
state
ma'am.
your idea.
Thank you. Body cameras are a given. Everyone agrees that body cameras, the more we can have, the better. I've often said that I'd like a side view and a rear view body camera as well, and then a little camera floating above with a microphone dangling down so that we can know what happened, because every police administrator wants all the information that he or she can get on an incident. But above and beyond that, yes, we do need a fusion center. I don't know why I call it a fusion center. It's probably from the military that I picked that up. But we can use a new case management system and predictive analytic technology to do more with existing resources. That is the hallmark of what I've been saying for the last, I don't know how many months. We do more with what we have, stretch our tax dollars further. That's what we need to do before I come to you and ask for more cops from the taxpaying public. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're halfway through, and now we turn to a question about funding. Some of you have talked about this already, but specifically, we're going to start with John Rogers first and ask you, is funding adequate to conduct all of the criminal and forensic investigations needed in a growing region such as ours? If not, how do you propose to meet those investigative needs?
Well, I think we could always use more funding. I find that more funding into our budget would absolutely help, but right now we're spending about half our budget on salaries and benefits. We can look at other alternatives, as in multi-jurisdictional task force. We do that right now with the SO, with the Sheriff's Office, and Lafayette PD as far as Metro Forensics goes, but we could also maybe incorporate the other municipalities in that. On top of that, there's grants. We can look at other types of funding that we can get from the state, but those things have to be in place, and we have to have somebody who knows exactly what direction to go in. That's going to require hiring the right people to be a grant writer, or having someone on staff that can write grants properly. But there is funding out there through the federal government and through the state, but we have to stick our neck out and grab it. I don't believe that we should raise your taxes to help you. I think that there's money that can be found. We just have to look for it.
Thank you. Mr. Shagwa.
Funding, it's the big buzzword for all agency leaders. Where to get enough revenue to do what you want to do and provide the services that you need. As we mentioned earlier, the Sheriff's Office has roughly a $60 million budget. It's $59+ million. That's a lot of money, but it's already been allocated, and they have some issues at the Sheriff's Office. For example, with the new facility that they built on Willow Street, they expected it to be fully occupied, and it's not, because of issues with the state of Louisiana, not with the Sheriff's Office. So there are budgetary constraints that have affected the ability to provide services. What I'd like to do is get into the organization. I don't want to raise taxes. I think you're paying enough taxes, and we need to do more with what we have already. I think that we need to look at this budget very carefully, see how the funds are allocated for the different programs, for the different divisions, and make sure that that meets the vision that I have for the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, and that's to provide the best public safety services that you can get. We will have to evaluate the budget, scrub it, and move those resources.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
Some of the programs, such as the work release, actually are return money into the operating account of the sheriff. As long as these programs are fiscally in the black or close to it, and if we get a big benefit from those, I'm for them, and we're going to do more of them. If a program is revenue positive, then we need to increase that program to make our existing revenue streams go further. What we've done already, the inmates making trash bags for our 27 buildings that we manage, making our own air conditioning filters, is making your tax dollars go further in our budget. The Sheriff's Department is funded from 15% of the ad valorem taxes in this parish. So we get a finite amount of money every year besides what we can self-generate. We're going to increase our self-generation by staffing up the secure housing unit on the Willow Street facility, thereby getting DOC prisoners in there, and also expanding training operations on the Willow Street facility, thereby hopefully making that facility revenue positive. It's all about a bottom line, a business bottom line, to make sure we can stretch the dollars we have further and leaner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
Well, being fourth is proven again to be a bad seat to have. I agree with the three gentlemen up here. It's very everything that John, Rick, and Mark have said is right on the money, and that's one of the things that we need to look at. The funding is there. The funding is there. We just need to make sure that the funding is being used the way we see our vision for the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office and the needs of the people of Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office and the people of Lafayette Parish, making sure that the programs, the rehabilitation programs, the programs that are there to help the people not to be repeat offenders is properly funded and properly staffed. The enforcement divisions, making sure that they're properly staffed and making sure that the funds that are allocated properly to make sure that those people are getting what they're paying for. Thank you.
The next question goes to Mr. Shagwa first. Several years ago, the Louisiana Public Service Commission found that charges were very high for phone calls between prisoners and their families. Companies providing prison phone services share their revenue with jail operators, including sheriff departments. What steps, if any, would you support to ensure that families of incarcerated people can afford to communicate with their loved ones? Mr. Shagwa.
First off, I agree that in often cases, the fees to talk to your loved ones in prison is very expensive. But we also need to understand that these are private entities that provide these services, and they bid on these services, and the sheriff's office has to evaluate what they bring to the table. Some of these things are not just a typical telephone call. They actually have backdoor services that the sheriff is able to do analytical work through these programs. They're able to understand who's communicating with who, and even in some cases develop intelligence from that. So yes, they are expensive, and I think I need to look at it very closely to make sure that we're getting the most cost-effective services, because having someone in prison costs money. It costs the people on the outside a lot of money. They have to provide money for commissary, they have to provide money to talk to them, and these phone calls are expensive, and we need to make it as easy on the public as we possibly can.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
Well, it may not take even a minute to answer this one. Yeah, there's charges for phone calls, and I think that the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office currently has a vendor that makes it a very fair split to the inmates of our facilities and their families, and at the same time accomplishes what we need to accomplish, which is we do have to monitor those communications. And obviously I'm not talking about the cell phones that are smuggled into the jail. I think those are fairly low cost for the inmates and their families, besides what it costs to get them in there. But with all the joking aside, you know, it's something we've got to have. It's got to be profitable for the companies who are offering these services. In order for us to be able to get them to update their technology, they have to make a profit. I have no problem with these companies making a reasonable profit for the service they provide, as long as ultimately it serves the public needs, which is public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
In agreement again, we need to follow bid laws. We need to put that out for bid and making sure that we're getting the best quality of service for the people of Lafayette Parish that can be received for the minimal cost. And it's a matter of making sure that we can track, that we can obtain the information needed, monitoring the phone calls coming in, monitoring the phone calls going out, and making sure that it's at a minimal cost to the taxpayers, to the citizens, as well as to the members that are incarcerated in the jail, so that they can reach their families, so that they can touch the base with their families when needed, and it is a feasible cost. So I think we need to follow the bid laws, but we also need to set those standards and make sure that in those standards that we are getting what we need, and everything's covered, but for the reasonable price. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Well, without reiterating everything that they said, being number 4 again, we use a company called Telmate. We do utilize a bid process, but like every single person said up here, I mean, we have to analyze what exactly we're getting, what services we're getting, what we're going to be able to utilize it for, and is it beneficial to the inmates that we have incarcerated. And right now, the system that we have in place works. We have off-site visitation, and unfortunately, the cost of what it is the cost that it is. It is an expensive endeavor, but we provide a service to the inmates, and until something better comes up, or until we're allowed to find someone who has a better bid, we're going to be with Telmate. I think that maybe that's something our legislators could answer. I mean, there's enough lobbyists out there to do it. They lobby about everything else, so send them to Telmate.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mark Garber first. Please describe the educational and intervention opportunities available to young people in our juvenile correctional facilities. Do you believe these are adequate, or do you have additional plans for working with the juvenile population?
Well, I believe I'm the only candidate who attended a day and spent a day with the youth at the sheriff's summer camp. I went and spent a day with the at-risk high school students who participated in the sheriff's summer's camp this past year. And I listened to their concerns. I heard what was on their mind, and it was very, very instructional to me, so much so that I've committed to myself I'm going to go every year hereafter and listen to what they've got to say, because it gave me some very good insight as to how they view the system. And again, these are today's at-risk, special identified at-risk children, and if we don't do something with them to change their decision-making, they become tomorrow's felons. They're not going to leave our community. They're going to be right here. So what we do with them, what we invest in them, is going to have a payoff for tomorrow. So they are our future, and the Juvenile Assessment Center is off to a very good start. It was only created a short time ago, but thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
I've spoken with the lady with the Lafayette Parish School Board, and I think we need to bring the Lafayette Parish School Board and our educators into the system, into the juvenile detention center, more to where we affecting the kids and getting them the education that they need. She showed a lot of concern on the GED program, and I think the GED program is just a minor issue. I think we need to get working with the children on trades and working with them on further education as well. You know, we would need to work in agreement with what Mark was saying. You know, we need to work with them today. We need to educate the kids today so that they do not become a statistic later on in life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Unfortunately, I don't think that we should lump a certain group of kids into a at-risk group. I think all our kids are at risk. My daughter attends local high school here in Lafayette, and she told me the other day that she saw a drug transaction on the school bus. So I don't think that it's geographic as to where you live in Lafayette. I think all of our kids are at risk. I think the Juvenile Assessment Center is in place to help address some of those issues. I think that the GED programs are good, but I think we also, like Chief Leger said, we need to address other issues. We need to address the issues that are in the home. We need to address the issues that are on the streets and what they're coming up on a daily basis. I think it's unfair to categorize one particular group of kids as at risk. I think they're all at risk, and I'm honestly terribly worried for all of them. Kids face today issues that we didn't face when we were in high school, and you can look at it going all the way back. It's only getting worse. So we need to give them the right tools to be able to combat these things. We need to give them the right role models, the right leaders in the community, and point them in the right direction for a proper education.
Thank you. Mr. Chagwa.
I think the Sheriff's Office has dedicated itself to dealing with juveniles in our system. One of the things that we're trying to do with the Juvenile Assessment Center is to divert children from having to be placed into the system, which is a crucial thing. I think over the past few years, we have almost lost a whole segment of our youth. You look at the violent crime that we have in this community today, it's typically being done by a general late teens, early 20s population. And it's because there's a breakdown. What we're doing in juvenile detention and at the JAC is good work, but we need to expand it. Like was mentioned earlier, we need to work with our education system. We need to work with our mental health professionals to make sure that we're providing the proper education. I do believe that we need to expand on the trades as well. I would like to see that in our adult programs as well as in the youth programs. We need to teach them skills that they will have and will be able to use as soon as they leave the facility.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll shift to a different population now, and we'll start with Chad Leger. The issue of domestic violence is an important one. How will you work to address domestic violence crimes in Lafayette Parish?
Well, I think it starts off with education. I think we need to educate men and women about domestic violence, what statute and what qualifies domestic violence, what programs are out there, and what is available to help with domestic violence and the problems that we're seeing. Sitting as a member of the Louisiana Association of Chiefs of Police and sitting on many boards, I've sat on a board with domestic violence. And that's one of the things that we've seen it nationwide. It's a huge problem that we have to battle. And with that battle, it all starts with education. We have to make sure that everyone is educated on what the criteria are, what resources are available to help you when you have that problem, but most importantly, making sure that you're able to stand up when you have that problem and that you're confident enough to stand up when you have that problem to make sure that you get the proper treatment needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Domestic violence in every city is going to be an issue. It's going to come up at every forum. Everybody's going to talk about it. I want to let you know that I was totally devastated when I found out that the funding from Hearts of Hope was taken away. I think Hearts of Hope was a very important organization that addressed victims in our community. We spend millions of dollars on offenders at the sheriff's office, and I have a problem that we don't address the issues of victims and victimization. I think if we're going to allocate funds to help offenders and rehabilitate offenders, then we need to address issues of victims and victimology. Fortunately for me, I was able to return to school and get my education in sociology and criminal justice, and I took a lot of classes understanding victim and victimization, understanding juvenile victimization. These are things that we need to address on the front, because if we give the tools to people that are victims of domestic violence, of sexual abuse, of drug-infested homes, we can stop them from becoming offenders later on. I think it's a key issue, and it's very important. I'm going to focus on it as sheriff.
Thank you. Mr. Shagwa.
Domestic violence and what we will do with it. Law enforcement answers domestic violence complaints on a day-to-day basis, sometimes multiple times a day. It's becoming a growing and burgeoning problem in our society that we're having trouble actually addressing it. There are places out there such as Faith House that are available for people that are victims of domestic violence. The Sheriff's Office, along with the District Attorney's Office, is in the process of developing a legal services center where these ladies can go in that are victims of domestic violence. They can go in and have all of their needs taken care of right there, because it's difficult for them to have to go to a police agency, to a District Attorney's Office, to the court. They put it all in one place where it's easier for them to come together. I have personal experience with domestic violence in my family. One of my daughters has been a subject of domestic violence. So I understand the need. We have to have the educational needs. We have to have education for law enforcement to handle it more effectively.
Thank you.
Well-
The next,
I'm sorry.
Mark Garber, right.
You got it. The good news is that the funding to Hearts of Hope, I don't believe that was cut. I believe it was to the Faith House. There was a DA's office that chipped in every year under Mike Carson's administration. That was discontinued under Keith Stutz's administration. What I've been working to do is with the Faith House and with the DeZormo Foundation is to create a one-stop shop for victims of domestic violence, and that is underway as we speak, where you have detectives, you have you have prosecutors there, you have social workers, all at one stop, so that these cases get prosecuted quicker and more effectively, and the victims of domestic violence get the resources that they need. That's what we're evolving to here as a community already, and I intend to fully support that as a sheriff, and as my wife and I have done personally by throwing our own benefit for those agencies, organizations. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Garber, I have to do that at least once.
I'm going to keep you straight, okay?
Okay. The next question goes first to John Rogers. We're going to ask you to predict the future, either near term or far. How do you think the crime rate and incarceration rate will change over time, and why?
Well, I think if we don't address the key issues that are in our community, then the crime rate is going to increase. We've had a recent outbreak of shootings. Obviously, we have a drug problem, but I think multi-jurisdictional task force would help. I think working in the community with the individual pillars, working with the pastors of the community, working with the chiefs, all the city councils, that's what it's going to require. If we come together as a united front, then we can address these issues. And that's what's most important, is how are we going to stop what's snowballing into a problem, which is a nationwide problem. And I think if we could stand as a united front and put our personal feelings aside and work for a common goal, we can address the issues, and we can ultimately bring crime down. We can ultimately bring the level of incarceration down, and we can address issues of mental health, substance abuse, violence in the homes and in the schools, as well as violence on the streets. Thank you.
Mr. Shagwa.
To predict the future is a little difficult. I think that we do have a spike in crime right now, but only in some areas. Right now we have drug-related crimes that are affecting a lot of our community and the way crime's committed. We have burglaries, we have other things that are actually down in some areas. And it all goes back to proper police work. I think if we have, the communities are working together right now. The community wants to work with law enforcement to help educate their people to make their community a safer place. We also have a collective of police agencies in our area and our surrounding area that want to work together to, again, make our place a safer place. What I think we need to focus on is targeted, proactive law enforcement to specifically address the problems as they occur. Our community is going to have to grow and educate our youth and make our family unit stronger and that's going to help reduce it. But police officers have to react to crime on a day-to-day basis, so we should do that in a positive, proactive way.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
Well, I think the future can be predicted based upon the past. We've been doing it for a long time. Crime goes in a sine wave type rhythm. When it's down, it's going to go up. When it's up, it's going to go down. I noticed that Chief Kraft was smart enough, being a 30-year veteran, was smart enough not to take credit for the recent downtick in crime in Lafayette Parish, right before we had a bunch of shootings and homicides, and all heck seems to have broken loose. Because that's the natural way it goes, just like business, just like the oil field, no matter what we do. The Covenant Spotlight interviewed me as a candidate, and they asked me, what's the #1 cause of crime in Lafayette Parish, Mark? And I said, well, it's the same as it is everywhere. And they thought I was going to say drugs. But before drugs, there's the breakdown of the family unit. And until these communities, these different facets of our community start taking responsibility in helping us, all we can do is do a great job of collecting evidence and solving crimes and getting convictions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
Last year, Lafayette Parish reported a 12% increase in crime last fiscal year. As a whole, the whole parish, including every police department, sheriff's department, and everywhere. It goes back to, like Rick said, proactive law enforcement. It goes back to being officers on the streets, being proactive, not reactive, proper staffing, making sure that our guys are getting out there and taking care of the communities. While taking care of the communities, it's about community involvement. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's about getting the people together, working with community leaders, working with our law enforcement to bring the unified law enforcement together with our community leaders to make a difference, to minimize on the problems that we have in different crime areas. When you minimize those problems, that decreases incarceration. Decrease in incarceration will decrease as we go with proactive law enforcement. So I think we need to really increase the manpower on the street and taking that effort and making sure that our community leaders are working together with the law enforcement and working together, which will bring the full circle around with decrease in incarceration as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question goes first to Mr. Shagwa. What do you think is the most important skill you bring to being a good sheriff?
That's very easy. It's leadership. Being involved in law enforcement for my entire life, I was born into it, and I was raised by a state police major who taught me the value of leadership and how to run an organization. And being in state police, the education that they give you is phenomenal when it comes to being involved in public safety services. And it all goes back to leadership. You have to drive an organization from the top. And you need to push that leadership all the way through the organization to the lowest guy working at the bottom of the pile, because he needs to understand leadership, he needs to understand organizational control, and he needs to understand how he impacts the community. So we drive that from the top down. And number two, it's not just the organization. We have to represent ourselves in the public, because the sheriff is a public servant. He works for the public. So you show leadership in the community and an effective, driven department that will work proactively. Leadership drives it.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
The most impressive thing or skill, I believe, for myself is the diversity of my experience in education. As I mentioned earlier, diversity is strength. I bring a PhD level education. I bring experience as an actual attorney, as a prosecutor in this parish. I bring experience as a federal agent with the Secret Service and with the Department of Defense, as a member of a Special Operations Task Force that killed Zarqawi and several other high-value targets in Iraq in 2006, as a street cop in Arlington, Texas, where I've made hundreds of arrests for OWI and felony offenses, as a game warden and deputy sheriff here growing up in Acadiana and knowing this community backwards and forwards. That's what I bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
What I bring to the table is born and raised here in Lafayette Parish. What I bring to the table is 26 years of service in law enforcement here in Lafayette Parish. What I bring to the table is 2 jobs in the last 26 years here in Lafayette Parish. Serving you, the people of Lafayette Parish, and knowing the demographics of Lafayette Parish. I've worked in the south, the north, the central, the east, and the west portions of Lafayette Parish. I bring the proven leadership and the skills as an administrator for the city of Scott. I bring the passion to serve the people and the commitment to to making sure that the best quality of life is brought to you, the people of Lafayette Parish. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
My platform has always been that I'm going to bring leadership, transparency, open communication, and honesty to the department. I want people to realize that the Sheriff's Office is a public service agency, and we're here to help you. And if you have issues in your community or you have issues in your neighborhood or schools, then we're there to help you with it. I've been with the Sheriff's Office my entire career. I haven't left. I've stayed there in order to push my law enforcement career, and I've had a unique opportunity to see it through the ground up. I've watched the changes under Sheriff Newstrom's administration. I will continue those changes. I will continue the programs, but everything's going to be assessed and what's best for Lafayette Parish, because ultimately it's your decision. What are we going to do? And how are we going to do it? I think the sheriff, as the chief law enforcement officer of the parish, is the leader of the agency, but he is responsible to y'all. He is accountable to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have reached the point in the forum where the candidates will make closing statements. Candidates have 2 minutes each. We will hear from the candidates in reverse alphabetical order. John Rogers will give his closing statement first, then Chad Leger, Mark Garber, and Rick Shagwa. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you again for spending your evening with us. I want you to leave from here and please do your due diligence. Look at each candidate, look behind the scenes, see what each candidate is made of. I have a question for you, and I think it's important. When you call 911 and you ask for help, you're in an emergency situation, do you want a person to take a business approach to that call, or do you want that person to take a public service approach to that call? I've been here my entire life. Lafayette is a great place to live. Louisiana is a great place to live. I've spent my career dedicated to the sheriff's office. And what's most important is that I didn't leave Lafayette to find out that Lafayette was a great place to be. This is it. This is our home. This is up to y'all. I encourage you, please, do your due diligence. Look behind the scenes. I take office making no promises. I've garnished no favors, and I have no strings attached. I'll be the people's sheriff. I'll be your sheriff, accountable to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Leger.
Like I mentioned earlier, born and raised here in Lafayette Parish. Raised my family here, my kids here. My kids went to public school here in Lafayette Parish. My commitment is to serving you, the people of Lafayette Parish. I've proven that for the last 26 and a half years. Locally here, working 14 years with Lafayette Sheriff's Office in all the enforcement divisions, working as an administrator as chief of police for the city of Scott, proven leadership, working for the people. That's what it's about. It's about serving the people that you chose. I chose to serve. I chose that, made that choice 26 years ago. And I continue today to make that choice. At 49 years of age, I'm not ready to retire. I'm not ready to quit. I'm far from leaving this department and far from leaving this profession. I have the passion, I have the drive, I have the ambition, I have the vision to serve you. I have the proven leadership to make sure that we can take Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office to the next level from where Sheriff Newstrom has taken it, and making sure that the people are served, again, to provide you with the best quality of life possible for you to work and for your kids to play, learn, and grow. I guarantee you and I promise you the open door policy, I will be accessible to you. I'll be here for you, I'll be here for your families, and I'll be here for your businesses. I promise that I will be here for you, and I have the proven leadership to prove that. I have been there for the last 12 and a half years as chief of police. I'm humbled to sit here in front of you. Again, I thank the league for allowing us to come tonight, and I'm humbled to sit in front of you as a candidate for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. I'd appreciate your consideration and your support, but most importantly, your vote on October the 24th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Garber.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all again as we wrap this up for your attention, for coming out here tonight, giving us a chance. What I bring to the table as far as my education and diversity of experience is something that I alone can offer. I am the only candidate who is a practicing attorney in this community who has prosecuted cases in this community, and I have the unique knowledge of knowing and understanding what it takes to prove a case in a court of law in this jurisdiction beyond a reasonable doubt. And that equals better criminal investigations, that equals better patrol practices, which equals people going to jail quicker and easier. When the DA's office gets a case to prosecute, I know what it takes to get it ready to prosecute because I've prosecuted those cases long enough and thoroughly enough in every felony that we have to understand fully what it takes to bring that to bear. That's what we need in the lead law enforcement agency in this parish going forward. That's the nuts and bolts of law enforcement. That's what you're going to get if I'm elected sheriff. You're going to get someone who's well-versed in technology, a person who has seen the cutting-edge technology used by the Department of Defense to fight terrorism, someone who has also spoken face-to-face to terrorists who were bent on destroying America, and I've gotten inside their heads and learned about them. That threat isn't over. That threat is going to confront our community. I'm ready to deal with that threat. Also, increasing the police force, the street presence of police, through the increasing of our reserves. I can increase our manpower without increasing funding by cross-commissioning and increasing our reserve officers. Again, the end goal is the pragmatic approach, the business-like approach of putting more cops on the street where they belong and reducing crime in a business-like fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shagwa.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming out here this evening. It's been a pleasure to sit here and give you our ideas. It's been an honor to sit in front of you and let you evaluate each of us to see which one you think will be the best for the Lafayette Sheriff's Office. To tell you about myself very briefly again, I have done almost everything that these people have done. I have worked for Louisiana State Police from the time I was 19 years old for over 25 years. I was a police officer on the road. I was putting people in jail when other people were in college. My education was vocation specific. It came from Louisiana State Police. They taught me to be the best law enforcement officer that the state of Louisiana could provide for you. I worked in investigations. I worked in training. I taught adults how to be police officers for many years. I taught people the use of lethal force. I taught people officer survival. I taught them basic police skills. Then I went into investigations. I worked narcotics investigations across a third of this state. We worked mid to upper level smuggling to make sure that drugs did not come into our community. You're not going to stop them all, but you can make a big dent. And that's what we did. When you talk about preparing cases for court, me and my men have prepared thousands of cases for court that were prosecuted, and many, many people still sit in prison today. I also work public corruption. Whenever we had somebody that was involved in our cases that were of a public nature, whether they be police officers or public officials, if they were corrupt, I would loop them into our investigation and put them down too. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to serve the public. I've done this job for most of my adult life. I know how to do the job of running a police organization, making the police officers that work for you the best police officers that they can possibly be. The Lafayette Sheriff's Office is an extraordinary organization, and as such, we should be the best police agency in the state of Louisiana, and that's what I'm going to bring to you as your sheriff. I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates, and good luck with your campaigns. Thank you all for showing up. We hope you feel that you can make a more informed decision about which candidate for Lafayette Parish Sheriff most closely meets your expectations. Don't forget that early voting begins on Saturday, October 10th, and runs through Saturday, October 17th. Election Day is Saturday, October 24th. Please verify your polling place in advance, as some have recently changed. Thank you for watching. Spread the word about the additional forums coming up for Council District 6 tomorrow evening in this same location. And on Monday, we'll have a forum for District 7 and 8 right here in this auditorium. And next Wednesday, we'll have a forum for Districts 2 and 3. Thanks again to our timekeeper, Ms. Ami, to the League's Voter Services Committee, to UL Lafayette and the College of Liberal Arts, and Acadiana Open Channel Community Media, and to the candidates. Good night.